guys, welcome back to my video. For this week we'll be making a few Thanksgiving dishes to take to my brother's because he is hosting. He already bought majority of the stuff, so I was really responsible for the turkey, which I cheated and I bought a smoked turkey from Greenberg Farms. It's the favorite turkey I've ever had, so I don't really want to mess with that. It's kind of a pain to make anyways. I'm also making stuffing, but I'll make it from scratch. So I will start off by baking my own bread today so that it's ready to actually make into that dressing casserole. And lastly, I will be making the pumpkin pie, but in this case, I decided to do a pumpkin pie swirled cheesecake. And to make it extra fancy, a maple whipped cream and bourbon salted caramel, if I got that right. But here we go. I totally forgot to film all of just what happened right now, but I mixed all-purpose flour, sugar, yeast, salt, and then I incorporated some warm water and olive oil. And this is for a no-knead bread recipe. I thought I'd go super simple with it because I don't want to feel stressed out while making anything for Thanksgiving. But I'm going to let this rest in a warm room for about 2 to 3 hours so that the yeast can do its work and let the dough rise. Next step was to actually roll the dough out. So if you ever use a no-knead bread recipe, you'll know that it's like a really sticky mess. And no matter how much you try to control it, it really has a mind of its own. Don't get too discouraged here and try to make it look perfect. Just try to do the best that you can. It's gonna come out great anyways. There's a bunch of recipes that are online, so I've tried maybe 4 or 5 of them. I tried a good amount and they all come out really good. The reason why I'm holding the cast iron with a towel already is because it's been preheating in the oven at 450, so it's pretty dang hot. The bread's gonna want to bake with the lid on. And then it's going to require another 40 minutes with the lid off. So you can see that it's browned, but not as brown and golden as I would like. This is fresh out of the oven, looks so good. It's so impossible to not just tear into it right away, but really you need to make sure that it cools off before you actually start eating it. And then I started the whole process over again. Next step was to actually cut the bread up. It has a pretty thick crust, so you can see me sawing off the bottom, and I'll mention it again, but it makes it so that I can cut through it easier. I feel like whenever I do this off camera, it goes smoothly, and then whenever I have to do it on camera, everything just turns into a janky mess. But anyways, the bottoms are off as rustic as I cut them, and now I'm going to actually slice through. I usually struggle at the very end because that hard crust is at the bottom, but now I don't have to worry about that. Okay, and another shortcut I figured was instead of cutting with a knife, once I have it into slices, I can actually use a pair of scissors to cut the rest of the cube pieces. And this just saves a lot of effort. As much as I love my bread knife, sometimes nothing's quicker than a pair of scissors. Also, I'm just really not good at cutting bread. This is the part I struggle with the most when baking cakes, is making even layers. I just really suck at it. I think it's because I overthink it and I'm clumsy and I love details, but at the same time I'm terrible at being precise. So scissors really saved my ass in this scenario. Okay, so after that, since today is Tuesday, Thanksgiving's on Thursday, We want to give the bread at least 2 days minimum to kind of dry out. I could speed it up in the oven, but I'd rather put less labor into my dish, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it all early so I don't have to worry about it later. So you get a baking pan, and I'm going to roll out some paper towel. And we just want to dry these, like I'll lightly cover them so they become slightly stale, and that would make it better for using in stuffing. So we'll need a second sheet pan for the rest of the bread. Hello, we are now using the new camera that we just got. So I had filmed a couple of videos already with the stuffing, so I baked the bread, chopped that up. That was all on my phone. I'm now going to use my brand new stinking camera to film the rest of my Thanksgiving cooking. So today we are going to work on the pumpkin cheesecake because that will need to set overnight in the fridge, and it's just one less thing to worry about. So first up is the Biscoff Crust. Okay, the Biscoff Crust asks for 6 tablespoons of melted butter. I have 5 right here. And cutting off an extra tablespoon, and I'm just gonna heat this up in the microwave until it's melted. Since it's going in the crust, it's not like we're actually baking it. It asks for 2.5 cups of these Biscoff cookies, and a whole sleeve is pretty much just that. So that's really convenient. Okay, butter is melted. We're going to pulverize these first. Then you're going to want to add those pulverized cookies to a bowl. Add 2 tablespoons of white sugar because you really need this to be super stinking sweet, I guess. And then the 6 tablespoons of butter that I had melted in the microwave, and it's still kind of hot. Mix that all together so that the liquids and the dry ingredients mix together evenly. I will say that this crust tends to be a little bit hard, like it's kind of hard to break through with your fork, but you know what, it tastes so good, and like when you bite into the actual cookie, it's so crumbly and crunchy that it doesn't matter how hard it is to eat. In fact, I could probably just eat the crust straight. Okay, then I'm gonna want to put this into a 9-inch Springform pan that I have. Here is my Springform pan, so it has that little latch right there for easy release. I'm just going to get my crust. Make sure to get every last bit because you spilled some on the table. You're then going to want to get a measuring cup. I have this one with a broken handle, so it's just perfect. And press the crust into the bottom of the Springform pan. Make sure it's nice and even. I'm just going in with a rubber spatula again so that there isn't much crust like going up at the edges. I kind of want it to be like perfectly flat because I think it would be prettier. Okay, so let me set my oven because I totally forgot to turn it on. Get my pie crust, and it'll stay in there for 10 minutes. Easy as that. So while that's in the oven, we're gonna go ahead and make our filling. First thing you want to do is combine the cream cheese and the sugar. It asked for 4 8-ounce packs of cream cheese. And 4. It also asks for 1.5 cups of sugar. 1, 2. I want to apologize now, and I'll probably say sorry later, but I'm not used to my new camera yet, so it'll go in and out of focus. But here I was adding some sour cream. This really made it a lot fluffier. Now I know for next time to always look for cheesecake recipes that use sour cream. I'm going to be adding 3 eggs, one at a time. To make the swirl effect, you're going to want to take out about 2 cups of the cream cheese mixture that you just made. One cup pumpkin puree. And then you'll want to add 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin spice, and we pre-made this so that you don't overpay for it at the supermarket. It's super easy. And it also asks for 1.5 teaspoons of just straight cinnamon. And you're just gonna want to mix that all together. It feels like a lot of spices, but I'm guessing if you do the swirl effect right, you won't be getting any bites that are like too spiced. Before I put the filling in, I want to wrap the Springform pan in aluminum foil. It's those cheesecakes that need a water bath. It's a pain in the ass, but you know what? The cheesecake comes out better, so it is worth it. I have my 2 mixtures and a big spoon, and I'm going to alternate spoonfuls. I got my pan. Put this guy in there. Let's see what the bubble. I boiled the kettle full of hot water. I'm gonna put that in and make sure it goes up at least 1 inch. And it is super steamy. So yeah, this just ensures that the cheesecake cooks evenly. If you've ever seen those cheesecakes where it looks like it's risen on the sides, but it slips down towards the middle, those are the ones that aren't using the water bath. Do it very carefully. The recipe says to wait or to let it bake for 55 to 70 minutes, which is kind of dumb because then you aren't sure, like it's a big window of time for it to finish. So I would just say if you do make this, keep an eye on it. Like all other cheesecake recipes, you want to check by gently shaking it and see if it kind of wobbles in the middle. And you can see I had a giant crack in the middle of my cheesecake. This was really sad. To make sure to take it out of the oven very slowly, it's still cracked. This is the morning of Thanksgiving Day. I have to actually finish my stuffing. I only toasted off the bread, or cut up the bread cubes and dried them out, so I have to actually make the stuffing itself and also make the toppings for the pie and decorate, heat the turkey, and heat the gravy. And we should be good. It is now 10:15 a.m. Dinner's at 5, so we have plenty of time. It's going to be stress-free, at least. I'm going to try to make it be. I didn't include the sound in this because it just didn't sound great without a mic. But I went ahead and chopped up a bunch of celery and onions. I'm going to put the onions in the freezer because I am super sensitive to onions. When I cut them, I just start falling. So I figured out that, or I found a tip online really, that if you put them in the freezer, it kind of freezes the moisture so that when you cut into them, it's not so harsh. So they are going in the freezer while I chop up the celery. At this moment, you'll hear my husband bring in the takeout food we had ordered for Thanksgiving breakfast. We got some Mexican food because he had made pork belly pastor as the dish that he was bringing to his family. So we thought we'd taste test that and ordered some tortillas.
These are huge. They're like fucking big. They're like too big.
Well, that's good. We don't. Is it in pizza boxes?
They're huge. They're like these are tortillas. I mean, we can break it up and stuff, but
yeah. And they were really ginormous. I mean, they had to fold it in half in order to fit inside this pizza box that they delivered it in, but they were also really thick on top of that. They were really delicious, but we managed to scrounge up a plate of the tortillas, some pork belly pastor, and pineapple salsa that he had made. There was also this stuffed dish that had like potatoes and chorizo in it. I don't forget the name, but it was super good. And after that, I went right back to chopping up onions. Okay, now we have to saute the onions and bell pepper and seasoning, or poultry seasoning, in a ton of butter. Alexa, how many tablespoons is in 2/3 cup butter?
0.6667 cups of butter is 10.67 tablespoons. By the way, it's Black Friday. To shop Amazon deals, just ask, what are my deals?
Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and use way too much butter because Thanksgiving. We're going to saute the onions and celery that we just chopped. Okay, so butter is just about melted. I used unsalted, so I'm gonna make sure to add a lot of salt as I go because I want it to be super savory. Alright, so celery can go in. Hey! My cat just stole one of these corn nuts I was snacking on. So this is poultry seasoning. I've never used it before. I always use fresh herbs, but the recipe called for it. But it has basil, rosemary, sage, marjoram, thyme, and oregano. So pretty much all regularly used herbs dried and put into one container. On top of the poultry seasoning, the recipe asked for a bunch of fresh herbs. It asked for parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. It didn't ask for much of it, so I have a bunch of herbs just drying off right now, but I made sure to cut those up in very tiny pieces so that nobody bites into like a giant leaf of sage while they eat the stuffing. Okay, now to mix all that together, this is the 2 loaves of bread I previously baked and dried on baking sheets, so they're definitely a bit stale, which is exactly what you want. Okay. I'm not sure if this is going to be enough space for me to toss, so I'll do it a half at a time. Alright, so we're gonna do a half at a time. So half of the herbs. Here's that lovely veggie mixture. And then, oh man, that smells good. I have some chicken broth. This is like the one holiday out of the year you can cook like Paula Deen and it'll be okay. The bread is like a sponge. I'm going to want to add a little bit more broth. Since the bread is really like hearty and rustic and the crust is pretty thick, I really don't mind adding a lot of broth. Okay, it is ready for the oven. I actually ended up putting extra drops of butter on top. I mean, Thanksgiving is once a year. All right. Voila. Okay, stuffing is almost done, but while we're waiting for that, we're gonna go ahead and make the maple whipped cream. I'll be using my favorite whipping cream again. I also added cornstarch to the whipping cream so that it's stabilized when I put it into a piping bag to pipe flours with. That was kind of what messed with me. You'll see me kind of screw up with the piping later on. I think I might have put in a little too much cornstarch because it had this kind of powdery mouthfeel, which wasn't exactly pleasant, but at least it still tasted good. And I'll also be adding the maple syrup. As you can tell, everything I get is from Swirl's. Next up, I'll be making the salted bourbon caramel. I've never actually made a caramel before, so this should be pretty interesting. The first ingredient is 2 cups of sugar. You'll also want to add to this a half cup of water, and a tablespoon of light corn syrup, which is an ingredient I'm using for the very first time. These in there. So we're going to want to boil this mixture over high heat. Oh my god, it's kind of crazy. Also, apologies for the dirty stove. I had been cooking on it all day and even before, so it came out kind of crusty. But making a caramel is harder than it looks, and I wasn't able to brush the sides with water. They definitely recommend that to help it stop crystallizing, like you see that ring at the top. But it took a long time because I kept messing with it. I think the key is to wet the sides and to kind of leave it alone. So I'm going to pour this in. Oh man, it's doing stuff. Oh god. Shit. Is this gonna work? Now to reveal the cheesecake. It looks even more cracked than yesterday. Just want to run my spatula around it so that when it releases, It's as clean as possible. Truth. Well, good. There we go. Put this on top of our lazy Susan, or whatever this is called, rotating pedestal. So you can see that I wasn't faring very well with piping out the frosting. I kind of wanted to do like little teardrop shapes, but they came out looking like turds, and I think it was the consistency of the frosting. There was just too many air pockets and it wasn't the smoothest texture, so I had to erase and repipe and erase again, and finally I figured out the best piping tip to use to kind of cover up how inconsistent it was. And then I sprinkled the top with pumpkin spice. The caramel unfortunately started to disappear as time went on, but it still tasted good. Here is the smoked turkey that I bought from that farm that I mentioned earlier. It is so good and usually the highlight of the dinner. But that's it for my video. Here's my Thanksgiving meal. I hope everybody else had a great dinner, and please like and subscribe, and hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.